Let's remember what Joe Biden said. Just a few weeks ago, he told CNN that he would not support Israel going into Rafah and that he would cut off weapons to Israel if they did. And this got a lot of attention. This was him for the first time supposedly exerting U.S. leverage.
I made it clear that if they go into Rafah, they haven't gone into Rafah yet. If they go into Rafah, I'm not supplying the weapons that have been used historically to deal with Rafah, to deal with the cities, to deal with that problem. We're going to continue to make sure Israel is secure in terms of Iron Dome and their ability to respond to attacks like came out of the Middle East recently. But it's just wrong. We're not going to supply the weapons and the artillery shells used that have been used.
Artillery shells as well.
Yeah, artillery shells. And I made it clear that if they go into Rafah, they haven't gone into Rafah yet. If they go into Rafah, I'm not.
So there it is. And now a few weeks later, this is Jake Sullivan completely contradicting what Biden said and basically sounding totally incoherent in explaining what the U.S. policy is. He basically says there is no U.S. policy.
Said yesterday that Israel has addressed many of the U.S. concerns regarding its operation in Rafah. 900,000 plus civilians have fled Rafah in recent weeks. Has Israel addressed all of the administration's concerns? Does the U.S. support what Israel is doing in Rafah right now?
We had detailed discussions on Rafah during my visit to Israel. These have built on weeks now, as I've discussed with you from this podium, of discussions on a professional basis about Rafah and about how Israel can achieve the defeat of Hamas everywhere in Gaza, including in Rafah, while minimizing civilian harm. I explained to the prime minister and other senior Israeli officials the president's clear position. I reiterated that position. I was briefed by Israeli officials and by Israeli professionals on refinements that Israel's made to its plans to achieve its military objectives while taking account of civilian harm. What we have seen so far in terms of Israel's military operations in that area has been more targeted and limited, has not involved major military operations into the heart of dense urban areas. We now have to see what unfolds from here. We will watch that. We will consider that, and we will see whether what Israel has briefed us and what they have laid out continues or something else happens. And one of you asked me the last time I was standing at this podium, how are you going to judge this? And I said that there's no mathematical formula. What we're going to be looking at is whether there is a lot of death and destruction from this operation or if it is more precise and proportional. And we will see that unfold. And we will obviously remain closely engaged with the Israeli government as we go. That's how we see the situation right now.
Oh, my God. Yeah, I mean, we played that clip last week, but it's something you have to watch again and again to really understand the depths of depravity and idiocy of this administration, and specifically the callow and inexperienced national security chief, Jake Sullivan, the best and the brightest of Yale University. He's going to monitor Israeli human compliance with human rights and the quote unquote laws of war by how much death and destruction they cause after they do it, and then retroactively apply what leverage. Yeah. We're going to let you go in, see how many you kill, how much you destroy. And then we'll make our judgment, because we don't have data. We don't have like the benefit of having witnessed what Israel just did over the past 231 days to know what they're going to do there. We don't know what their doctrine is. We don't know how they fight. We just give them these weapons, and then we tell all our lawyers to certify more arms shipments, like $200 million in munition, in tank munitions. Sorry, $700 million in tank munitions alone, which the Biden administration just authorized to Israel. We actually confronted, our correspondent Liam Cosgrove confronted the Pentagon about this gigantic lie that the Biden administration has set some kind of red line around Rafah, or that it actually was pausing any munitions at all. And this wasn't just some performative sop to the base to try to hold off the revolt of the progressives and the youth against Biden ahead of his reelection campaign. Here's Liam Cosgrove at the Pentagon, and he gets a very testy response from Pentagon spokeswoman Sabrina Singh. I'm going to speed this up a little bit.
Right. Yeah, over here.
Thanks, Sabrina. So last week to CNN, President Biden said that he made it clear that if the Israeli government goes into Rafah, I will not be supplying weapons that have been used historically to deal with cities. Of course, we've seen the Israelis use tanks in urban centers throughout this war. And in the latest arms package, which is now on its way, expected to be approved, and was after Biden issued that statement, is $700 million in tank ammunition. So this statement appears to be false. Is it the Pentagon's assessment that tanks will not be used in the invasion of Rafah?
I think you're significantly oversimplifying things. So what I would tell you to do is to do a little homework on the package that was approved, and that this is long-term sales that will be going to Israel, and the State Department would have more for you on that. In terms of operating within an urban area, the Secretary, the President have been very clear that these type of high payload bombs, the 2,000-pound bombs, it's not necessary to be used in an urban area like Rafah. We are still, and I want to be very clear, we are still providing Israel the means to defend itself against its fight against Hamas. And you are still seeing shipments of weapon systems going to Israel, and will continue to go through. That is a commitment this president has made. But when it comes to that one shipment is paused.
Okay, but in the shipment that is not paused is $700 million in tank munitions. And are you saying that I can read the Biden quote again? I just read it to you.
You don't have to.
Okay, but he said
Very clear that if they go into Rafah, they haven't gone into Rafah yet. If they go into Rafah, I'm not supplying the weapons that have been used historically to deal with Rafah, to deal with the cities, to deal with that problem.
we're not going to supply weapons that have been
You don't have
historically
to read it to me.
used in cities. So are you saying tanks haven't been used in cities in Gaza?
I would direct you to the State Department for more on the sales. That has to do with sales to Israel. I just don't have that in front of me.
Okay, so we are providing.
I'm going to move on to the next question.
And she punts really nasty. She punts to the State Department because they do the arms licensing. But Biden just ate his own words. Tanks are what they've mainly been using. Tanks were used in Khan Yunis to blow the head off of a 14-year-old girl named Dunya Abu Mohsen after she lost her entire family, lost her leg in an Israeli bombing, and blew her head off while she was laying in a hospital bed at Al Nasser Hospital. Those are the arms that the State Department is sponsoring, has licensed historically to Israel. And that's what the U.S. is doing again in Rafah. And Biden just ate his own words. I mean, he just came out and lied. And what did he get for that? He got the House GOP passing with bipartisan support a bill declaring that the U.S. cannot pause weapons to Israel. The United States cannot exercise sovereignty over, an administration cannot exercise sovereignty and independence on whom it chooses to sell weapons to or provide weapons to if it's Israel. I've never seen Congress do that with another country.
Oh, it's insane. And
And
going back to
really what it was the other country was passing a law. Israel was passing a law on Congress, not on the U.S. not being able to send weapons to itself via its stooges in Congress.
And again, going back to what Jake Sullivan was saying there, he's acknowledging that we're going to facilitate what he calls death and destruction by saying we're only going to look at it after the fact as to whether or not it occurred. Well, that means you're allowing it to happen because you're supplying the weapons that cause it. It's such a crazy admission. And Biden put himself in this position because obviously he felt the need to say something after the campus protests. So he needed to pretend as if he was exerting leverage. But all it does in the end is make him look increasingly incoherent and weak because he lays out these so-called red lines that are they're just totally meaningless. They're just for show. And every time there's an opportunity to do actually something to hold Israel to account, he doesn't do it. He caves. And he ends up just giving Republicans their talking points to pretend as if he's not doing enough to arm Israel. And it's just it's completely incoherent. Completely incoherent.
There's no policy. Right days after Biden gave that interview, Tony Blinken went before the Senate and said it was just a discussion we had about pausing weapons. We're still looking at things. So then the right hand doesn't even know what the left hand is doing, and ultimately Israel is making the calls.